Okay, we're with Ed Eichelberger, who's being inducted as a distinguished member of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. Ed, just a quick reaction to when you heard that you were going to be honored by the Hall of Fame for your wrestling career, and what you thought and how you feel about this opportunity.
Well, it was a good moment, needless to say. Somehow I've always thought that wrestling belonged to the current people wrestling, and that's where the emphasis should be. But it's nice to go back and memory things. I've been retired for a while, and going back and thinking about things that happened in my life are a very pleasant and happy thing to do, and doubly that way when somebody comes up and you get an award like this. It's a wonderful thing. I appreciate it.
Now, what got you involved in wrestling? I know you went to Granby High School in Virginia, which has a great tradition. How did you get involved in the sport? And tell us a little bit about your early years as a competitor.
That was an interesting background, because Granby High School that I went to was both a junior and a senior high school, so we started in the 8th grade. And when I went to Granby in the 8th grade, I knew nothing about wrestling. There were no wrestling teams in the state of Virginia. And before I got out of Granby, I had wrestled in 4 state tournaments. Billy Martin was a very busy man about the time I went there, and he had gotten it all started all by himself. And not only that, he took me to 3 national AAU tournaments.
While you were still in high school?
While I was still in high school.
And how did you do against the older guys?
Well, the first one was the best, as it turned out. As a young sophomore, I went up to Long Island, New York, and wrestled in a tournament up there at Hofstra, and started out with this year's NCAA Champion. When I asked Billy Martin who I was going to wrestle, he says, "Oh, some kid from out west." And he pushed me around the mat pretty good, and then I got into the consolations and won a couple of matches and got a 4th place medal. So that was a big deal.
So tell us about Coach Martin. What was he like at that time as a coach and as a mentor?
Coach Martin can best be described as the classical absent-minded professor. I mean, when he concentrated on wrestling, the world could come to an end and he would not know it. He was that focused and that good at it. And he also used psychology. I mean, he had to figure out how to get a sport started and get people interested that were otherwise interested in basketball or some other sport, and come out and spend some time in wrestling. And he found a way to do that. It was called an intramural wrestling tournament. Mm-hmm. And every member of the Granby High School wrestling team got hooked by intramural wrestling. And he taught it in gym classes. And I learned most of my wrestling my first couple of years one-on-one with Billy Martin in gym class. Probably not legal today, but that's the way I learned how to wrestle. And he had a farm, and we would go out in the farm. The summertime, the phone would ring, and he said, "Oh, we're getting together at an athletic club over here. Would you like to join us tonight?" And we were just wrestling every time.
Now tell us a little about your decision to go to Lehigh University, and why did you choose to go wrestle there for Coach Sheraton?
Well, Billy Martin had a lot to do with that as well. He had said to me more than once that it was, the finest school to go wrestle in, because they appreciated wrestling more than any other school in the country, he thought. And he had gone to Michigan, and his attempt at winning the national championship in the 40s was cut short by a Lehigh wrestler, as it turned out, who also went on to win the tournament that year. He also took me to a couple of summer camps at Lehigh, and that tournament I wrestled in as a sophomore in Long Island was like a showcase.
Yeah.
to Billy Sheridan. He was there and saw me wrestle, and so all those things came together. I was interested in engineering, and the combination of engineering and wrestling, you couldn't do better than Lehigh University anywhere.
Now, 3-time NCAA finalist, dropped one to a guy named Myron Roderick. Could you tell us a little bit about that match? He's also someone who's been inducted here in the Hall of Fame and has had a heck of a career.
Know Myron very well and followed his career with great pride. You know,
Yeah.
if you're going to lose, it's best to pick the best guy in the world to lose to. And I have nothing but respect for Myron. And it was a tough match. And, he managed to take me down 3 times in the first period, and that was it. That was the end of the match at that point, because that's the way it ended.
2-time NCAA champ, an outstanding wrestler. Tell us a little bit about your memories of winning the NCAAs and the experience of reaching your goal as a college wrestler.
Well, it's interesting because I never had any goal except to win the next match.
Right.
And that was done that way because I had a bad habit of getting nervous and getting uptight and not doing well. And that was one of the things I learned in the national AAU tournament when I was in high school. My first year I won that gold, that 4th place medal, and the next year won 3 matches, and I got to the semifinals and lost to a guy that I could have beaten. And it was only because I got uptight about it. And it was a lesson I learned that was important not just for wrestling, but for all of life.
Right.
And then if you make a mountain out of a molehill, you know, you never get to the top of it. And if you let something get too big in your mind, it's much more tough to deal with. And so I never planned a match. I never worried about a match. I just tried to make sure I trained hard and did what I could in the next match. And that worked out pretty good.
Now, after you finished with college wrestling, you used the engineer part of being a Lehigh engineer and went and pursued a business career. Did you consider wrestling beyond college at that time, or was your focus entirely after college to get right into the business of engineering?
Well, I was an electrical engineer, and I came out of Lehigh at about the best time in the history of this country for an electrical engineer. I had a lot of firsts. And I took a job in computer engineering at IBM, which was the beginning of a very exciting industry. And I tried to go to the Olympics, but a young man kept me from doing that, so I was happy to go on and work for IBM. And you know, I think a little of the focus I had in wrestling carried over to being an engineer, and you know, I liked it a lot, and so I worked on it 110%.
And had a very successful career.
And there was just no time left over for much of anything else. I made one brief attempt to coach at a high school because the coach was gone, and I discovered 2 things: that I couldn't mix the two, and I wasn't that good a coach. so I decided to be an engineer and leave it at that and let someone else do the coaching.
Now, they're celebrating during this weekend 100 years of Lehigh Wrestling. What kind of pride do you take that you're one of the athletes that helped build that tremendous program into something that we can all be proud of?
It's wonderful to be part of what I think is the best program in the country. They may not have the most national champions, but they have a lot of them. And there's no doubt in my mind that there's no better school for wrestling than Lehigh University. And one of the nice things about Lehigh, and I'm sure the other schools do this too, but they put the first focus on education and the second focus on athletics, and that's the way it should be. So I was just tremendously proud to be part of the program.
Well, I appreciate your time, Ed, and hope that you have a wonderful time here this weekend during Honors Weekend, and congratulations on being inducted as a distinguished member of the Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Very much.